stars of animation are shining. It's time to stay tuned. And now, here's your host, Phil Mackey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Stay Tuned Live, right here on Facebook, presented by Streaming the Magic. It's an animation-themed talk show hosted every week by me. My name is Phil Mackey. I'm an animator, cartoonist, and former Disney cast member, and it is my pleasure to be here, your host, every week as we deep dive into the world of animated films. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to start things off by letting you know that a few weeks ago, you may recall I had a special guest on the show by the name of Dave Bossert. He was a Disney effects animator for years, whose film credits included Fantasia 2000. Aside from his impressive career in animation, Dave is also an accomplished author. And if you're a fan of all things Disney, you'll be excited to know that Dave's latest book, 3D Disneyland Like You've Never Seen It Before, is now available for ordering. This book is a glimpse into the past, and it showcases a rare, never-before-seen collection of 3D photographs of Walt Disney's theme park in all its glory. Disneyland is captured in time and space from opening week in July 1955 all the way through the 25th anniversary in 1980 and beyond. There are photos of attractions that no longer exist, like the Skyway to Tomorrowland and the Skyway to Fantasyland, the original submarine voyage, Conestoga wagons, and the original Tomorrowland, and much more, along with vantage points that have changed dramatically over the years. The signed and numbered limited edition book is only available through the publishing website, which is theoldmillpress.com. And you can actually get the signed and numbered version through there. It's a limited number of 750 copies available right now, and they are going fast. So they're also doing a 20% off plus free shipping offer. So go ahead and get yourself a copy of 3D Disneyland Like You've Never Seen It Before, and get it before the general public gets their grubby little mitts on it. All right. Enough of that. Enough of the advertising. We're going to get to the meat of our show now, and I'd like to first of all give a little introduction because you guys are in for a treat tonight as I welcome a former Disney animator who has recently started his very own animation studio. Here to tell us all about animating at Disney and bringing surfing penguins to life for Sony, and all about Raft Animation, please welcome Chris Jenkins.
Hey, Phil. How you doing?
Hey, Chris, I can't hear you.
You can't
there
hear
you
me?
are. There you are. Good.
I'm here.
I'm doing good. How are you? Okay. I couldn't hear you at first. I was a little bit taken aback. Well, welcome.
I'm here now.
Welcome to the show. Oh no! Are we experiencing delay? I think we might be having a bit of a delay. It's okay. You can hear me?
I'll mime to you and then say something shortly afterwards.
Yeah, okay, there you
just
go.
To make it clearer.
Okay, I'll just give some extensive pauses. Okay, well, we'll get started here. And first of all, I wanted to say before we talk about your new studio, because I'm really, really excited about that, I feel compelled to bring up Roger Rabbit because that movie was such an important film for me, and for you.
For me, yeah, yes.
For you. So tell us
for a lot of people in London, it was a very important movie. It's my first movie, 30-something years ago now, and it was possibly the most uncomplicated experience. I couldn't believe that when we worked overtime, we'd get pizza for dinner, and somebody else was paying for it. Little did I know about Hollywood at that point, but it was a really great experience. And right before it, I'd been working as or training as an illustrator, and throughout the artistic world in London, this project was bubbling up to the surface, and finally I caught wind of it, went for the interview, and got the job the same day. And the truth is that I wasn't particularly talented. I could hold a pencil. I was a fully trained pencil holder by that point, and I started work with a whole team of other people and figured out what Inbetweening was the wrong way. And
Wait,
then
tell us the wrong way of Inbetweening.
the wrong way is to have the drawing that you're working on between the papers that you're supposed to be in betweening. So if you have keys, you're supposed to have the main action here, the second action there, and you're drawing right in the middle of them, right?
Yeah.
So I took that literally, not having animated before at all, and had the paper right in the middle. So I was trying to reference by looking what was there and looking what was underneath. Yeah. So that didn't last too long. A very kind came over and said, actually, if you put the paper on top, it works much better. And it did. But it was a great experience.
By the way, when you said that you read the description for the project and then you went to apply, what did the description even sound like?
It was a verbal description, actually. I was developing prints in the photo lab, and a guy I'd worked with a few years back at college, who was on a different specialty course, said that Disney was in town. And because I loved everything to do with Disney, my ears must have stood up on top of my head. Actually, I looked like Roger Rabbit at that point. But I was just really curious, and I asked him more about it. And he said that, yeah, they're doing some new movie, and they're looking for people. They're looking for people who might have some artistic experience. And so I honestly didn't expect anything from it. I went to the interview, and I got the job in the interview, and was sort of stuck to animation from then on. It was great. I was really lucky. A lot of us were lucky at that point, but I'd never animated before, so actually just finding out that I was good at it was as much of a surprise to me as anyone else.
Oh, good. Well, you took to it like a duck to water, and I use that.
Yes, indeed. I see where you're going. Yeah.
We'll come back to that. But did you have one more Roger Rabbit question? Did you have any, like, when you were working on the film at the time, were all you animators sort of talking behind the scenes going, man, this is going to be the coolest thing when this comes out, or were you thinking it was going to completely tank?
I think that we knew it was something special. We certainly knew it was special when we were visited by people like, Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg. I was in awe of meeting Richard Williams on, I think it was my first day, and it just kept establishing itself as this is a big deal. It's never been done before, quite like this, and what a movie to start on. I mean, it was great.
So you continued with Disney after that for a while, right?
Oh, for a long while, yeah. I finished out in London and then was invited to come to the States. And
how scary was that, by the way, coming here?
How was it?
Yeah, how scary was it?
It was really scary in concept, but once I got here, again, it was like I don't know. I really loved it immediately, except driving. I was used to driving on the other side of the road, and there was one night when I came out of a car wash the wrong way and realized I was on the wrong side of the road when the headlights facing me were a different color.
Oh, yes. Although I have heard that traffic in London is not much better.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was a different day. That was 30 years ago, man.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair.
Horse and cart in those days.
That's right. So I mentioned taking like a duck to water, and we're gonna jump to a surfboard. Talk a little bit about Surf's Up, which is a penguin to water, but still, really a unique little film because and for those who haven't seen Surf's Up, I'll just kind of remind everybody. There's this charming attribute that these penguins are being followed by a team of documentary filmmakers, which is I think we take for granted as audience members, we're so spoiled for choice now.
Yeah.
But if you stop and think about it, it's almost like you made a film within a film, because you've got the main film that you're making, and then you've got all these moments where you have to go back and you show old footage from the old days of surfing, and all these old films that don't exist, you're making it up, and so you're making these films within films. How challenging was all of that?
Well, tremendously challenging, and it was a sort of a foolhardy pitch. What I thought, let's do that. Let's do a mockumentary. But it was really based on my love for the movie Spinal Tap, and then I became much. And I think at that period in history, anyway, all the mockumentary stuff was becoming more of a thing.
Sure.
So it was our chance to do that. But to do it properly, I mean, you can do a spoof of it, and it's fine, and probably would have worked just fine. But to really get into it, you need a backstory for every character. You need to fake the old footage, as you're talking about, beautifully done by Ash Brannon, my good buddy and one of the directors on the movie. And a camera technique, which in our case was a form of motion capture, but it was capturing the background. And we had a camera that could figure on any character, and then if somebody off to the side is we could zip that camera over and find them there as if it was a real environment. And it was techniques like that, led by James Williams and his fabulous layout team, that really kept the honesty of the movie alive. If we ever faked it, if we ever went out and were trying to be silly and zany, it wouldn't have worked. There's a lot of silly and zany in this movie, as you're showing now, but it was always within the context of, this is a documentary about penguins by penguins, even though we never see the interviewers.
Yeah, I think the key, and you guys really nailed it, I think the key to solid comedy is that the characters who are in the comedy they're taking themselves seriously,
Yeah, for the most part, that was because we constructed it like Chris Guest has constructed his movies.
Sure.
And that was by knowing that we needed to hit certain marks, plot lines, because there is a plot, but allowing the actors then, based on all the sort of rehearsals we had done and all the deep information we had done for each character, they could act that person, or that penguin in this case. So, we had Jeff Bridges and Shia LaBeouf and Zooey Deschanel, amongst others, and they were fine actors that were just loving the opportunity to really, really get into the characters and make things up and have fun.
Now, you wrote the film, so I'm sure when you were during your time at Disney, you picked up a few tips and tricks about how a lot of the classic films at Disney weren't too heavy on a million plot points. They just kind of let the characters have room to be with each other in the moment. Is that something that you took into the writer's room when you were creating the script here?
Well, first of all, I was one of the writers. I worked with Don Reimer, who has since passed, a wonderful friend, wonderful writer, and Chris and Ash. Chris Buck, of course, from Frozen, and Ash Brannon, who's done a million things, Toy Story 2, for example. And we created this together. I had the concept, I had the idea, I had the notion of putting the character on a journey that took him from his home, a small little place, just like where I grew up in Wales, and went into the big lights of the sort of the world of penguin surfing in this case. But it was sort of autobiographical, because for me to come from the tiny little place into Hollywood was a parallel. And so it was sort of autobiographical. The notion of working with Disney certainly has given me everything in movies, and I think still to this day, you have Disney knows how to tell a simple story, and it will always get bigger, no matter how simple the log line is. It'll get bigger because the story artists will bring all the wonderful fun to the characters, and you want that. And people crave that. That's the other world you make. But what I did learn from Disney was that was always informative. We did. And Surf's Up, we did a lot of improvisation, as I said, and we captured the performances we got, and then we went back to the editorial lab, as it was, with Ivan Balancio, novelist editor, and we took everything apart and listened for the best takes. Now, they may not have had the same liberty early on in Disney, but the idea of capturing a performance that is different to what you might have expected actually happened for the first time on Bambi. And it was with the little kid that was playing Thumper. And you probably know the scene. It's the one where Thumper's saying, or Mom says, Thumper, what did your father tell you this morning? He's like, if you can't say anything nice, beat, beat, beat. Don't say nothing at all. And the editor, from what I learned, was going to cut that. But I think it was Frank Thomas in this case. I might be wrong on that. But Frank said, no, that's it. That's exactly what we want. Now, the truth is that the little kid that did it was probably 4 or 5 years old. Tired out, he'd been recording all day. And he was bored and he wanted to go home. So when he said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say nothing at all. But it was perfect because what it did in the movie, as we know, it feels like this little guy that's like, oh, do I have to say that, Mom? Mom, don't make me say that again. And magic is born of it.
I
think
sorry, life is what you're describing here, is that the vocal performance having an illusion of life that then the animator can then mimic and marry the two together.
Absolutely. And I think Disney's always done that super well in finding the right performances. And in many ways, it's really why features and TV are different, because a lot of times you have more time to develop the character, and you can observe moments like that and hold on to them and put them up on the screen. I'd like to do it with shorts. I'd like to do it for TV these days. I'd love to do something where, not unlike Surf's Up, we go down to the beach when we're all able to again, and talk to people about environmental issues, and in a sort of a creature comforts like way.
Yes.
Take that and animate it with different animals, and once we're laughing at something, we are taking it in.
Sure.
If it's presented to you in a sort of an Al Gore-like way, you're not necessarily. I mean, it's brilliant. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of isn't getting across. You're sort of looking away. You're looking for something else to do because it feels bad. But if you're getting good and you're laughing, you're taking it in.
So what you're describing is maybe not getting so heavy-handed, but having the intention behind the project being a noble intention without beating the audience over it every 5 seconds.
Yeah, never be didactic. Never tell them what they're supposed to feel. Let them laugh, because laughter is like an intravenous, injection. It just gets in there, and then later you'll be doing something else and you're laughing at it and you go, wait a minute, maybe. So yeah, that's what that's what the new company's about. Actually, that's what we're attempting to do through some of the new processes.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about Raft here in just a moment. Before we do that, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Duck Duck Goose on Netflix, which I just watched recently. And I went in with no expectations. I don't think I saw a trailer, or if I had, it had been a long time. But I've got to say, it's visually very pleasing to the eye. That was my most surprising takeaway. Was I was kind of amazed at how beautiful that the film is.
Well, I think you might have been the fourth person to see it, so I'm glad for that input.
The fourth.
It's a beautiful movie, and it suffers from a lower budget than a feature normally has, which is to say it doesn't have quite the same attention as features have. Like in Pixar, I understand that they will revisit things many, many times to get it right. Myself, as the writer and director of this, and the fact that it was being created in China, I had to sort of rip things off the photocopier to give to the artist concerned, and I didn't even have a full script yet. So it was it's a beautiful movie, and I love it, and I'm proud of the accomplishment, and I'm amazed that we actually got a movie finished from it. And the performances are outstanding, and I wish I could go back over it and not have quite the sequencitis that it has. That said, it stands on its own, and because of P&A funding issues, it never made it to the theaters, unfortunately.
Can you explain? I want to dive into those two things you said there. One, you said scene-itis. Can you describe that? Can you give a definition of that?
Well, it's by default, really. It's what you get with any, early screening of a movie, because the artists that are creating the boards for something are taking that moment in time and animating with all their skill to create a great moment, a scene, right? Then when you go to the next scene, again, this only happens early on. You're creating something that can feel disjointed because you haven't had the luxury of wiping through it. And that can happen across a movie that has a certain impact to the viewer. And shorthand in the business, we call it scenitis.
Okay, so basically you have to break down a movie into scenes when you're creating it. It has to be made into more manageable pieces, but what you're saying, that can also put blinders on, and then if you don't look at the whole thing in relation to all the other pieces, it can feel kind of segmented. That's what you're saying? Yeah,
I feel that. Now, listen, I've been told, and it apparently is doing really well on Netflix. I've been told that people love it, and so I'm glad of that. But, you're asking the guy that did it, and I'm like,
I get it. But really, I was amazed. I shouldn't say amazed, but because it didn't get a theatrical release. I hadn't heard anything about it. I went to play it on Netflix, and I thought, there's some really excellent animation skill happening in this film.
There's a few different things to talk about there too. Yeah, I mean, it should have been in the theaters because it's certainly good enough and would have done very well. But it's simply by the audiences that Netflix achieved. It's gonna, we know it would have done well. I think that the animation is superb, and this is from a group of people I worked with in China mostly. We did have a small team here, a great small team in Culver City, but most of the people were Chinese, and they hadn't really worked on something like this before.
Now, how did you arrive on, I should say, the idea of the location of the film being in China and the character names being Chinese in origin? What was the thinking?
The origin of that? That was really that the Chinese studio wanted something that was Chinese. So having been presented with that, I thought, well, I'll do my best, and you get into these things. You dive deep when you're writing. You try to find attributes that work. I think the best one in Duck Duck Goose is it's a simple gag, but I love it, and it's this headstrong goose that's leading these kids across country when he can't fly. They can't fly because they're kids. And he says, I know how to get you to safety, and he heads across country. He doesn't know. He has no idea. He's only seen things from the air. So when he gets to, there's a moment where he gets to this great big wall that's blocking their path. And he goes, hey, look, it's no problem. We'll go around it. And then you pull out, and it's the Great Wall of China.
Yes.
There was much more of that possible, but we didn't have the time and we didn't have the budget, and we had what we had. But like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in it. It works beautifully, and as I was going on to say, it's the animation that the Chinese guys were able to accomplish is beautiful. Yeah, we had a head of animation over there called Denis Couchon, who you might have realized is not Chinese. He's French, and he was a great sort of mentor and classically hard to please Frenchman who got the best out of people, and they loved him there. And he's a good friend now and created some beautiful, beautiful animation.
Yeah, I would recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Not you, obviously. Anybody watching this. Now, between the two collections of clips I've shown so far and the sign behind you on the wall, it would be silly for me not to ask, do you have an affinity for birds, Chris?
Do you know, I've never, ever, ever thought about that.
Well,
Honest to God, I haven't. Yeah.
Well,
Wow, I feel really stupid now. Thanks.
In your resume, it's a lot of birds.
Well, I did. I worked as a wildlife illustrator, or I trained as a wildlife illustrator, right? More technically, it was called scientific illustration.
Yeah.
What that meant was you'd paint every scale on a fish or every feather on a bird, and it had to be accurate because before the days of computers, yes, I go back that far. It was necessary to have, you know, an artist that could create a perfect representation of life, and I did a few, you know, bird paintings at that point, but no. It's not on purpose, I promise you. It just, it's a flight of fantasy.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Well, that's you know, I guess now that you know that, now that the cat is
I'm going to start working on an ostrich movie tomorrow, just because you said it now.
I mean, if you didn't, it would it'd be like you were burying your head in the sand like an ostrich.
Touché.
I have to do the pun thing. Okay, so we go from a tale about a rabbit, Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, he wasn't a bird. You might have noticed that.
He wasn't a bird. No. But he did see tweeting birds when he hit his head.
This is very true. Maybe I was affected by that.
Maybe a tweeting bird. So then you go to penguins, then you go to these geese and these ducks. And now we head into Raft Animation, which is a very
it's a different idea.
Different idea. Tell us all about it.
It's a different idea because as an independent, by the way, I'm starting a company during the worst virus this country's ever seen, so wasn't planned that way. However, the company aims to show the world and wildlife and issues of the environment in a manner that, well, as we were talking about earlier, it makes you laugh, it makes you feel good about things, and hopefully, what it will do is it'll takes just one kid or two kids to actually want to be stewards of the environment as they go on. Animation does something really very important, doesn't it? I mean, my imagination, and I still have dreams about flying like Peter Pan, or, you know, whatever it might be. It's just that it works on the imagination in a particular way where anything can happen. And if that's the case, then what we want to try to do is to have people believe that they can literally, in this case, change the world. Obviously, it's much, much more complex than that. But we're talking about families and kids and being able to raise issues that they can discuss together, that they can feel good about together. And again, little things make a big difference. So the idea is, much as we were talking about earlier, is that all information is better when it's presented positively, when it's presented as a challenge and a great thing, and we can do this together. And Raft Animation is all about that. It's not pointing out environmental problems per se. I mean, we know it's a much deeper conversation, a much bigger problem than answering glibly. But if you can appeal to families with a simple message that's also funny, then I think you have a chance to inspire young children, particularly, to want to do something that it can be different, and they can connect with cartoon characters to change the world. Excuse me.
Why do you suppose animal characters in particular are somehow more relatable?
Well, that's a subject we could talk about all night, but I think that they are
You have 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. I'm just
in Japan. Everything is a life, right? It's a Shinto religion. Animals imbue certain characteristics about us. Rocks, trees, stones, they all do. And in animation, even though we're not setting out to do that, there's something fundamental in people that can hear the story better through, and at least children can hear the story, understand it better through an animal's path. I think it's probably because we empathize immediately. We don't need to be told this person, that person, it's a good person, it's a bad person. I think we will think that, just as with a teddy bear, that this is good. I think that's what's going on.
okay. So yeah, so the combination of maybe innocence with humor. Those two things kind of they do a really good job at breaking walls down, emotional walls, and then we're more receptive to whatever message that is going to come across, is what I'm hearing you say. And
Absolutely. I mean, you could look at Lion King or Bambi.
Sure.
Not that we would make Bambi these days, because we'd have a new generation of people crying their eyes out. But it does something important, and it finds us. And information in animation, I think, because it's been studied and because it's been, as it used to be, drawn or created, manufactured as a performance, it does something more. I need to study this more, but animation reaches people in a way that live action doesn't, obviously. That's why there's so much of it, and that's why it always pretty much does well, no matter what the movie is.
That's an interesting point. How do you feel about when there are projects that arguably could have been done live action, but the choice is to go animated anyway? Do you think that that's maybe they're missing the potential of what animation can do, or do you think they're doing it because there's, like you said, a sort of instant acceptance?
I think that's probably got more to do with the way that it was found by the author, the creator, and who bought the pitch and who's doing what. But when you think about, say, Lion King as an animated movie, and then later, of course, it's an amazing show, and then it's an amazing movie, there's something fundamental about the story itself that's actually reaching beyond the medium. The original certainly had that rising capacity to move people to tears and belonging in a world that they didn't know an hour before that. So I think animation accomplishes that, and then the theater and the live action are built on that goodwill in some way. But I don't know. There's something about the way that an animal can be animated, characterized, that is beyond reality, right? Glenn Keane always used to say that he animated from the inside out, and boy, does it show. Which means that you're capturing the performance just as an actor will, and then it grows out of that. Whereas maybe less experienced animators will draw from the outside in. Now, I know everybody's going, well, wait a minute, you have to draw the outside because it's a line, but it's not. When you're animating and you're animating quickly, it's really coming out of you, and you find some place that has a certain people keep flocking to.
I like that. That's really insightful. Yeah. So you started Raft, and what you were saying when when part one, before we went to commercial break.
To commercial break, yes.
Yeah. You were explaining how you picked an interesting time of our existence as a culture to launch a company.
Well, yes, clearly, and people are hurting all over the place. So anything I say next is not underestimating anything. And my family has its own fears, just as everybody else does, and we try to move beyond it and try to be happy because we must, and go on. But what happened during the initial stages of the COVID virus, outside of all the fear and what we felt as humans, was we were shut down. And during that period, as people will have seen from news and YouTube videos, animals who normally don't do this were coming out onto the street and going, "Hey, there's no humans around. Let's have some fun."
Yeah.
And it's beautifully sad, or sadly beautiful, or just like optimistic in a sense, because as the skies were getting bluer because we weren't pumping, car exhaust into them,
Right.
or the seas were becoming clearer, or as in Southern California, the red tide, so-called, the phosphorescence was bigger. It's because we weren't there to dampen everything down. And that's interesting. Obviously we can't, and we won't do that forever, but the notion that Mother Nature can heal itself so quickly is a big stinking deal.
Yeah.
And again, I know enough about ecology to know it's really not that simple. But it is a message of hope. It presents another way of thinking about things. It says that you don't have to look at what the, I'm getting all technical now, but you don't have to look at what the scientists say we have to achieve by certain dates. We see something happening, and it provides a visual and a very real example of how it could be different. Wouldn't it be great to step outside and that you're not breathing in, X amount of particles of exhaust or lead or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
So we looked at that, and it inspired us to create a short that we're doing right now. And it won't all be about COVID animals, for want of a better word. It'll be about how Mother Nature can fix itself if we just give it a little hand. If we just say, all right, maybe this isn't just, it's not outside of our reach. It's possible. So how is it possible? We clean up after ourselves. And I made an analogy of my kids cleaning their rooms, which is laughable in a way because they never do clean their rooms, but the idea is still there. We have the possibility of cleaning up our own shit, and we can do it well, and we have a better world for everybody. So right now we are working with an excellent group of animators, and this is all unplanned. This is actually getting back to what you first asked. We're working with a company in New York called Alchemy Effects, and we're also working with a great animation company called Lagoon Black, and there's an animator there who his name is Daryl Vasquez. And he's just an A+ animator. And then from there, he's leading the animation. Then we've got people in Santa Cruz, we've got people in Canada, we've got people somewhere in LA, all working in a room on their own, creating beautiful animation that Daryl is putting together. I direct during director times. It goes to New York, gets put together with all the technical stuff and the effects, and we should be able to get this out in about 3 weeks. Now, what that tells you is, largely because there was no two people in one room at any point, is that animation is still viable as a medium, even when you don't have a studio. Now more than ever. I directed most of Duck Duck Goose by remote, actually checking in with China.
Sure.
And learned how to connect with people that way. And it was great.
So the short...
So why not?
When can we expect to see the short from Raft?
In about 3 weeks. I can't say for sure, definitely, just because of certain technical things that are appearing, like, the rig could be a little stronger and so forth. But in about 3 weeks, I'll let you know, okay, so that you'll be able to let everybody.
Yeah, I will gladly promote it here. And how long has the idea for Raft been? I mean, you just launched. Is it officially this summer? That was the...
Yeah, it was right as COVID was happening, in fact.
Okay.
We had our coming out ball. When
did the idea for Raft first germinate? Was it years ago, or is this more of a...
My partner, Michaela Hart, I feel like I've known her forever, and she's a producer. She's worked in TV, international animation production, worked with Nickelodeon and places of this kind, and we just hit it off as friends. We met at a party. I'd recently done a script for a studio, and she was there with another friend who I knew because she was one of the cast voices on Rio. So I went to go see Karen, who was a friend of Michaela's, and Michaela and I started and chatted all night, and then she basically stalked me for the next few months and made sure that things were happening, because while I was licking my wounds from Duck Duck Goose not being released properly, she was like, yeah, but we could do this and we can do that and we can do the other. And and that was in 2018. And then through last year, we made a pitch to the World Surfing League about doing the kind of thing that we had done with them on Surf's Up, because they were very much involved. And from there, Raft was born in a wider field of, well, this could be something more than just about the oceans or about surfing or about, it could be a vehicle to really tell stories that open up people's eyes. And
Sure.
And then along came the virus, and here we are working remotely with everybody. We didn't know that part of it, but it's working fine.
I imagine, and I'm glad it's working fine for you guys, because that lineup, like you said, it seems to have lined up kind of ideally in a way. I mean, not ideally, but you know what I'm saying.
It's hard to say that when you realize where we're coming from, but I know what you mean. Yes, it is. But the opportunities to highlight, global warming,
right,
is a wonderful thing in a sense, because just as we're, isolated now, if the full effects of global warming happen, there'll be another kind of isolation.
And there's all kind of parallels you can relay between, people getting sick and the Earth getting sick. I'm sure there's all sorts of things.
Very much so.
And there's a lot of potential, I imagine, there with partnerships with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and all kinds of wonderful organizations that I'm sure would love to partner with a company that's nature centric.
I hope so. So. I think that people, as we continue, will see the possibilities of how animation is able to highlight certain things. Yeah.
So we mentioned a little bit ago about how Duck Duck Goose, by the way, didn't get theatrical release. I'm just curious, is there anything that you learned from that situation that now going into Raft that you're like, okay, we got to avoid so that we don't have this sort of a thing happen again? Is that question making sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know that there's anything that can be done. Otherwise, you make choices about the studios you work with, the people you team with, and you are professionally committed to having fun. It sounds stupid, but on Surf's Up, probably the best movie I've ever worked on in terms of the team and the people that were so excited to be there, and doing story meetings down at the beach, because why not? Just sound effects us, as does the smell of the ocean and all those kind of things, and it meant something. And then having surf days where we take the entire team, so everybody gets to feel what it's like to sort of stand on a board, mostly fall off, but yeah, I think you have to have fun on these things. Animation, particularly, pretty much all the way through Disney, the studio knew how to make sure that everybody was having a damn good time. And I haven't been there for some years now, and I miss it. I still dream about it, but they did know how to make sure that how everybody felt included, and that we're all in it together, trying to make a great movie. Certainly came back on Surf's Up and working with Sandy Rabins and Penny Figelman Cox, who were heading up Sony Animation at the time. And it was Sandy that acknowledged that even though Surf's Up at that early point at the studio, it had sort of failed. It was sort of very, very much let's just say the story didn't work. But I had this idea stick in the back of my head about reality TV as a sort of an idea, or a documentary, and that's actually goes all the way back to Roger Rabbit, which was an animated movie made in a different way, or live action animated. But there's a marvelous technique with these amazing artists. You can do more than just tell that story in that world or that story in that world. What about all the different techniques you can think of. Nothing really stops you in animation. So
Right.
at that point, it was a feature that was a documentary that we should observe, and we should try to make a movie, because it's funny. It's just funny when somebody is delivering a line straight to camera and then go, "What did you say? Huh?"
Yeah.
And they're looking over there, right? And you have to plan for it, so it's not really happening in real time. But to fake that was a wonderful opportunity, and another great way to do an animated movie. There's tons more.
I hope there is tons more. I want to ask one more question that I've got kind of in my brain here, and let everyone know before I ask this question, if you guys have any questions for Chris and want to jump in before we close out, please put your questions in the comments, and I'll go ahead and see if I can get to them. But what I wanted to ask you, Chris, is so you're in a unique opportunity to have worked for, one of the well, first of all, I would say the premier animation company in the world, and then also for Sony, which in its own right has been doing some marvelous things.
Yes.
And what do you take from? Because I know every studio is different, every pipeline is different. What do you take from each of those situations that you now say, let me imbue this, a little bit of this and a little bit of this into my own studio?
Well, it is definitely, without question, mostly from Disney. I was trained from the time I left college to all the way through 2001 when I left, and I left at a point where the studio was still trying to find John Lasseter. So it was an in-between time that where Peter Schneider and Schumacher had left, and an intermediate point at which the studio was still trying to find itself. So I already had a sense of the way in which movies were found, the way in which the potential of the sort of almost solid core of an idea could grow things out beyond anyone's expectation. I was at the time lucky enough to know Joe Grant too. He was a big supporter of mine, and he became a very good friend in a very short period of time until his unfortunate death. But he showed me all these old drawings that he kept hidden, and they weren't hidden, but they were just there in his room, in his office, on little files. And I'd talk about being interested in something, and he'd say, "Oh, like this," and he'd pull it out, and he'd show me, and he'd go through the drawings, and I did this in 1934, and I was, what an experience. That was definitely the highlight of my animation career, in the sense that it was a direct through line to what animation is as we know it now. And he's just a lovely guy too, really giving and caring, and a kind of a shining light. So yeah,
So
that's what I take forward. Pardon?
Holding on to the people that spearheaded everything, and sort of taking the life lessons that they've contributed, and kind of remembering those as you move forward, is what you mean?
Absolutely. I mean, Joe lived it, and many other people there lived it for a long time. Ed Gombert, Chris Buck had been there a long time. I think that everybody there knew how to make an animated movie. There wasn't even a shorthand. It was just like they knew how things moved along and how it was iterative. So I said at the very beginning of us talking tonight, you keep it simple, because you know that you're going to fill that with fun. So many animated movies, and so often, are built on layers of information. You're like, there's no way that's going to come out in 85 pages or 85 minutes. So even on Surf's Up, probably I didn't really know the effect of this in go from the very beginning to the very end. But I said, we must keep it simple. It's about a guy who's kind of big-headed about what he can do, thinks that he can beat everybody in the world with his technique, to an island in a big competition, and wipes out. Now, he's been led along the way by an idol who he looks to, who turns out is not dead, and his heroic death was not heroic at all. It was, he sees it as a cowardly way out. Now, you know how that's going to end to an extent, but we didn't know until we got into the movie that he wasn't going to win. You know, the real lesson was to enjoy surfing for what it is and to not have it be a competition.
Did that feel to you like a metaphor for making animated films?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then, of course, Chicken Joe is they run up to him and say, Chicken Joe, how does it feel to win the competition? I won? I think that might be my favorite line in the movie.
Well, because it kind of makes the whole winning and losing thing feel arbitrary, you know?
Yeah.
Which is great. It's brilliant. So raftanimation.com is the website. They can officially visit the website now.
They can officially visit the website.
And maybe next month, maybe they can see something from Raft as well.
Absolutely, they will. Yes, and it's beautiful. I've seen the animation already, and it's terrific.
That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'll make sure that I share it here. Just before we go, I know it's some of the comments from part 1 of the video before they got booted out. Ryan, who is in the room, he was saying that I think he was referring to Duck Duck Goose. I'm not sure which one. I'm pretty sure he was referring to that. But he was saying that his son has watched it multiple times and that he really enjoys it. So there's definitely some love for Duck Duck Goose. Yeah.
It was actually meant for kids and dads watch together. It's full of dad jokes.
Yeah, there's a lot of dad jokes. That's very true. And then another individual, again, the comments got wiped out when part 1 of the video went away. But I looked at it briefly, and someone had said, and if you're in the room, please feel free to put this back in the comments so I can get your name out there. But someone said that they're a huge fan, and I don't know if it was the same person, but I also read someone said, "Hey, I have autism, and I really appreciate Surf's Up."
That's great.
So just thought I'd put that out there. Oh, yeah, and Ryan is in the room. He's confirming Duck Duck Goose. He said, my kiddo, who is 3 years old, picked it as his favorite a few cycles ago. He said it was quirky and fun. So there you go. There's some love for Duck Duck Goose.
That's just brilliant right there.
Awesome. Before you go, Chris, I just want to ask how, without getting, I guess, too technical, how is there a life for a film if it didn't hit theaters and goes to Netflix? Is there a way for a studio to recoup their cost, or is it sort of like, well, we count our losses, maybe we'll do better next time?
I wouldn't know the numbers for Iron Giant. Surf's Up was called the CG Iron Giant because we had some issues with it being seen on its first release. It's hard in today's marketplace. You need to be out in front of people, and otherwise it can pass by. The only thing I will say is that the life that Surf's Up has had beyond its release is that it was nominated as the #1 best surfer movie ever by Surfer Magazine. Chicken Joe was nominated as the best surfer. I beg your pardon?
It was Oscar nominated, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, that, yes. It was Oscar nominated, which freaked me the hell out. I got, around about the same time, I got a letter from Paul McCartney saying that he and his daughter loved watching it together, which might have meant more than the Oscar nod, in all honesty. And it's got, many, 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 many fans. I'm going to sneeze again. Excuse me. It's got a lot of fans and people who really love it and know it, and they comment on the deeper things. They also comment on Chicken and particularly the moment where Chicken Joe sympathizing with Cody. Says, "You know, I never really knew my father either." And we show Uncle Bob's chicken bucket. You have to see it to know it.
I kind of feel like there's this thing with comedy where you can have a character kind of steal the show, and maybe that wasn't the intention when they were written, but it just sort of happens. You know what I mean?
In every animated movie I've ever worked on, there is always a character that steals the show, because the main character has to carry the arc of the movie, and there's seriousness and there's doubt and there's release in that arc usually, right? There's a character that needs redemption, so you follow that path. There's a character trying to find something, but like in Jason and the Argonauts, as a story that finds the golden fleece, but it isn't what he was looking for. The sub characters, you have more time to play with them usually. That's why I think.
That's a good point. Well, and I didn't mean to derail you from talking about being the premier surfer movie. That's quite an achievement. So congratulations on that. And thank you for being here tonight, Chris. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but I appreciate you.
That's no problem, Phil.
It happens. Good luck with Raft. I really look forward to seeing what you guys turn out, and I'll make sure to share it with everybody here on Stay Tuned. So thank you,
sir. It's a pleasure. I'd love to do it anytime you're available.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll have to have you back. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, thank you. I've been doing Stay Tuned in a number of forms for over 2 years now, mostly podcast. Sometimes there's a video form. And over the years, if you've been following this show, you know that technical difficulties are a thing that happen every now and then. And so I guess the lesson tonight that I learned years ago, but I have to relearn it now apparently, is don't show copyrighted content during a video, or they'll shut you down. So I'm trying to make sure not to do that again. I know it's entertaining to have, the animated sequence up on screen while we discuss it. I know that's super entertaining, and I love doing that. And unfortunately, I may have to stop doing it unless I find a way around it. But I do want to thank you guys for being with us tonight and sticking with us. Please check out Duck Duck Goose on Netflix. Of course, you can rent and buy Surf's Up if you can. Search for it. I don't know which platforms it's streaming on, but I know you can buy a Blu-ray copy of it. And then go to raftanimation.com and check out Chris and see what they're cooking up in the next month, I would say. But until next week, thank you guys for being here, and I'd like to thank all of my patrons. You guys support me every month, and it really does encourage me to keep the show going, and it helps make it possible for me to keep the lights on. So if you enjoy these free weekly shows and you'd like to support them, please visit patreon.com/Philmaki, and you can learn more about the various reward tiers, and you can even sign up today. And while you're at it, please check out my original comic books. Yes, that's right, my original comic books at philmaki.com. And you can also reach me online and say hi to me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, under the handles of either Philmaki or Retail Sunshine, which is the name of the guys behind you. Once again, if you guys are interested in being a part of the community that is surrounding this show, there's a group on Facebook called the Stay Tuned community page. So go ahead and visit that at facebook.com/groups/Stay Tuners. I've been Philmaki. You've been a wonderful audience. And until next week, keep those eyeballs peeled, those ears open, and be sure to stay tuned.